Thank you so much for listening to Hustle and Heart. I'm your host, Edie Weintraub. We have the pleasure of having Katie Meehan with us today. And while I love doing bios, I just want to hear it from the expert herself. So Katie, for those of us who have not had the pleasure of working with you yet, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Katie Meehan. I have been in commercial real estate and commercial construction since 2014. Originally, I started as an admin and I was actually studying computer programming, interestingly enough. But once I started getting to help with marketing things, I just fell in love and have been ever since. But as I navigated the process and program, I found that I was needing to outsource more work. And when I tried to hire people or outsource or work with an agency, I just felt that I had a lot of explaining to do as far as what commercial real estate, what things about the business side of commercial real estate and commercial construction and development meant, and how they tie together with marketing, because you really can't do one effectively without the other. And I struggle to find people. So I am creating courses and resources to help other people understand more about the industry, whether they're new marketers or just new to this industry. I want to bring them up to speed and help close that gap.
We appreciate the work that you're doing. I find that, commercial real estate historically has just been spreadsheets and pro formas and all of this. So historically, there's been a lot of men in the industry. But I think they often miss out on the fact that there's a lot of feminine energy that should be there and storytelling, because no matter what, at the end of the day, you're building a product. You need to incite folks to come to visit that product or to be a tenant or to incite brokers to come and look at it. I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about what have been some of the wins that you've had in regards to what is resonating with people in terms of how you're telling those stories?
I think it's, I guess I'll answer for myself just because this is the direction that I give. And I'm going to talk, I think, specifically from the commercial construction side, I think, because in the area that I live, there are pretty few barriers to becoming a contractor. You don't have to be licensed, so you can just start a business. Obviously, there's more factors to it, but I guess what that means is there are so many qualified contractors out there who can give you the same product. And similarly with commercial real estate, there's tons of agents out there. I'm sure developers are not picking up nearly the amount of phone calls because they're getting so many. But I always tie it back to, how do you do what you do? And how does it improve the lives of the client? Bring the value to them first. And I know that's kind of an overused term in commercial or in marketing, is bring value, specifically with social media. So the biggest win, I guess, would be the presence that I've built on social media has been huge. One firm, really had no marketing in place, but I joined, and within the 3 years that I was there, we added about 9 figures a year to their revenue. So yeah.
It's amazing. I'm sure everybody's like, teach me that formula, because I want to know exactly how to do that. But it is so fascinating, because I feel like oftentimes people don't know what you do, and they don't maybe do it the way you do it. But so much of understanding and respecting others is hearing their story and seeing how they're doing it differently and understanding why they're doing it that way. So what would you say is kind of like that magic sauce? What do you think was that? And I'm sure it was a little bit of an evolution too.
I mean, honestly, part of it was just the luck of the draw, hitting a firm that was open to that, that just basically handed it over to me and said, do what you want to. I think partially that came from, we have no idea what we're doing. And I also partially think that it came from the fact that when I had joined them, I had a lot of experience. I had experience in the industry that they were targeting. So I had a lot of connections, and that really, really helped. But ultimately, I'm not even really sure what I guess I did all differently. I think what I didn't focus on was, hey, we did another project, or hey, we closed another listing, or hey, we have another listing, because that just gets so dry. And the one thing that I'll really stress repeatedly is that although social media is part of your digital marketing strategy, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, the keyword is social. Treat it like you would when you're going to a networking event and have those kinds of conversations. It's not, sure, you're going to talk about business and what you do and validate yourself, but you're also just going to talk about real life. hobbies, interests, family life, whatever it is. It's really not all that complicated. I think a lot of people really overcomplicate it and think they have to follow all these trends and get all these hashtags right. And I'm like, nah, just get on there and talk the same way that you would with clients. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think it's challenging though. I mean, even I, for a period of time, was not comfortable in front of the camera. I loved being behind the camera. And I have just pushed myself because, I find that there are others in the industry that look up to you and they're like, oh, well, how did you do that? Just like today, I was on a panel and I'm the only woman up there talking about retail real estate and how to support local independent restaurants. Until you do it, people don't have a mirror for which to follow or to, join and join the community. So if there's something that you want to do, just try it. Because you'll just never know who comes up to you and says, that was great. Thank you for sharing the story. And, I felt this way, but I didn't realize it until you said it. And so you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of that still. There's whether it's just people not being comfortable or just general resistance. I'm still faced with it every day. And the thing that I would have to say is I don't want anyone feeling like they have to be on social media. It's more of a matter of if you're struggling to get awareness, and especially for brokers who are their own personal brand, to some degree, I would say, yeah, you kind of have to, but you don't have to be on camera. I mean, there's some people who post on LinkedIn every day and it's all text-based and there are some images here and there, but I don't even think there's certain people that are popping up to mind that I know are the top influencers in my area. And I'm like, I don't think this person's ever been on video. So there's lots of different ways to do it. But again, I'm speaking to the people who need to generate business. Some people need to generate business, but still have a good word of mouth referral system. I'm really not talking to them. I'm talking to your associates, maybe some senior associates, and a lot of entry-level people.
No, it's a great form of lead gen. And again, if you're comfortable on camera, fantastic. So talk us through how you make complex industry jargon seem approachable and not scary. Because I think oftentimes we're in our industry and we're talking about, whether it's this chase, which is a hole that runs from a ground floor or retail space all the way up through the roof that allows a restaurant to vent. Sometimes people just don't know that that's the word. So how do you feel like you're able to make it approachable for a wider audience to understand how all the pieces come together?
Well, as far as making the wider audience understand, I kind of stray for the most part from industry jargon for that very reason, because even someone who had many years of experience in commercial real estate, I came to construction and didn't know what the word pre-construction meant for probably about a year while I worked for a major general contractor. So I guess I say that to recognize that there are people who are intelligent and who have experience in the industry, but don't know all the industry jargon. So I don't use it. I like to boil it down to the most basic terms. And there's something that you may or may not have heard as far as copywriting and SEO best practices. And it's called explain like I'm 5. I like to use it more of like, well, this industry is a little more advanced. Maybe explain like I'm in high school. So that's kind of who I write to, or the style that I write in. And plus, I'm also much of a cheese ball, and I infuse a little bit of my personality into everyone that I work with. So I think naturally that just kind of gets a little more approachable. If there is something that is more relevant, that is a little bit of a more complex term that I do think the general public needs to understand, I will typically do that interview style. And then after the person I'm interviewing explains the term, I then say, okay, well, how does that benefit the client, or how does that benefit whomever the audience of that particular post or, piece of content is for?
No, I appreciate that, because then they're able to use it in their own voice, but then you can kind of nudge them, which is why I love doing podcasts. I mean, this is awesome. I get to talk to people and then splice up this content afterwards. And then you just, again, your audience comes in because of it. My audience is listening to you talk and they're going, I need to call Katie because she was just on that podcast talking about X, Y, and Z, and I need that service. So talk to me about maybe some of the misconceptions people have about marketing in our industries.
Oh boy, how much time do we have? No.
Let's go. Yeah, let's do it.
Honestly, a huge one, and this is one I was even just thinking about last night and I'm about to create a carousel post on, is graphic design and marketing are not synonymous. They are like groceries and cooking. You have to have the groceries in order to do the cooking, but you need all the knowledge, and they're just not the same thing. So you find a lot of people that are really talented in graphic design, and then there's a lot of expectations that are put on them to be able to perform X, Y, and Z that don't have anything to do with graphic design, other than that some sort of asset needs to be provided or created. So that's a huge one. Another huge one is that you need to be educating your audience on social media. I would say maybe market insights and current trends and things like that, and maybe helpful little tips that they can implement themselves. However, if I'm sitting there educating an audience on, I don't know, what is a 1031 exchange? No. I mean, the people who are going to do a 1031 exchange already know what the term means. That is just not going to help our audience. So I would say those are two really big misconceptions.
Yeah.
So I feel like I could go on forever.
Yeah, it's education, it's entertainment, and there's a third E, I thought. What's the third E? Or maybe the third thing you should be focusing on for social. Education, entertainment.
I mean, there's so many, maybe empathy, but there are so many. A lot of different people use a lot of different terms. A person I follow uses 4H. I do teach those kind of terms or pillars, but what I found success on was actually just topic pillars rather than type of performance. And sometimes I feel that if I tell them, okay, you need one in this topic for each of these 4 purposes, I find that sometimes people get too boxed in and confused. And I'm like, okay, just forget the sidebar then. Let's talk about just the topic.
Well, it's also nice to open it up because everybody kind of has their own way of approaching it. And so, I've got 4 other ladies on my team, and I love that their voice and their previous experience influences how they're going to look at something versus just hearing from me and how I've done it before. So I always welcome that feedback. This is how I've done it, but if you think there's a better way to do it, let's open it up. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And that kind of mindset is really, really valuable. I wish a lot more firms had that mindset. I've worked in both places where I had complete and total autonomy, and then I've worked in other places where something is picked apart for 3 months and is no longer relevant. So it's just...
It's frustrating because it's a little bit of analysis paralysis. And I feel like sometimes when I turn on the camera, I'm like, what did I want to say? So I'm usually making some notes for myself so that way I can at least have 2 or 3 words that then start the conversation, because I'll start thinking about it. And the more I think about it, the more I go, well, no, I don't want to say it that way. So it's somewhat, we're our own worst critics. So it is often helpful to have an outside, view and perspective. I find that when I travel, I like to go to different markets and I like to look at their retail real estate and their walkable retail. And I'll talk to the local folks and I say, well, what about this? And what about this? And they go, oh man, we never thought about that. But it's because they're so stuck in their world of every day and their routines that they're not looking at it with a fresh perspective. So I think it's immensely helpful to have your eyes on this industry.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes. So I know that you love strategizing, improving processes. What are some of the success stories you've had with kind of putting systems in place that have made, lives easier?
I would say a big one or a process that I like to use, it's really proprietary or anything like that, is just repurposing content. So my favorite thing is integrated marketing, where we have messaging on our website, we have copy on our social media, we have a newsletter, but not all audiences are in one place or in all 3 places. So I'd repurpose a lot of content. I think this one, again, is, to me, it sounds pretty basic and very obvious, but for someone who's just getting started, the way that I like to plan my content is just, I'm a paper and pen person. I will print out a sheet that has 4 columns and 4 rows. And I think that's what I was kind of, doing hand motions for before. And that's how I plan out my topics for that month. So I like to leave it really, really flexible. I don't say, okay, this is my content calendar and I have to post these things on these days, because as we all know, stuff comes up, especially if you're a small team or a team of 1 and you get hit with a pitch or a proposal and you can't. I like to plan out my content on that sheet and just have it be flexible and have it there in front of me. Another thing that I really love to do and suggest to everyone is to have your phone out pretty consistently. I know we can be really addicted to our phones, and that isn't healthy, and that isn't what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting maybe at the beginning of an event or taking 2 minutes to just slowly pan the area or the room, snap some photos, and just save that as B-roll. Take some video of people in a meeting. It doesn't matter what they're talking about. You're going to mute it later. Take some B-roll of people typing in a computer or stirring coffee or just enjoying a networking event. even if you don't have a purpose for what that post is going to be later, then at least you have a visual that you can use should it be related to the topic at hand, or even if it's not.
I'm so curious because I feel like, yes, I love capturing content. I am horrible about editing it, getting it out there. And so I think, it's important to put, like you said, systems in place to say, hey, here's the experience. Let's go ahead and edit this and then kind of fine tune. How have you found success in having different voices for different clients? Like, what is that kind of initial assessment? So that way you can understand, hey, are they, targeting a younger crowd? Are they targeting an older crowd? What is the voice of that brand? Because ultimately, like, there are probably 50 people that talk about the exact same thing on YouTube, but there's maybe one guy does it and then a girl does it. And I'm like, it's a girl there, not because, same gender. It's more like just the delivery and the approach and maybe the volume of the voice even, or the editing style of the video. And it's just crazy that we have the opportunity to choose between so many different inputs, but we can choose an input that resonates with us.
I mean, I find a little bit in the beginning, I just have a conversation with people and try things out. So I'm trying to understand what are their morals, their values, how do they actually speak when they're in person, how do they envision themselves in 5-10 years, even if they don't really have an answer to that, it gets them thinking, and then naturally over time the flow adjusts or the voice adjusts. But the other thing that I do is obviously just test things out with the audience. To some degree, marketing is throwing spaghetti at a wall, because what worked today probably works tomorrow as long as you keep the foundations the same. But the voices, the trends, the visuals might vary a little bit. And so from person to person, that's just naturally going to be different. I will ask if there are any terms or any voices. Most people don't really have an answer for me and they want me to figure that out for them. And so to that end, that's what I mentioned before, I infuse a little bit of my cheeseball personality.
People are people, like we're human beings. Yeah. We want to laugh and sometimes we want to cry and you just never know. So like, it's good to kind of, just meet you where you are at that moment because you might want to share a funny story.
Exactly. And that's, to that end, when I mentioned earlier, keeping your content calendar flexible, I'll plan the topics monthly, but I'll actually create the posts either weekly or sometimes just right when I'm about to post them. That's just what worked for me. I don't think that's what works for most people. Most people want to plan ahead and get a content calendar and get things scheduled. Honestly, I just felt too boxed in by that. It just never worked for me. And I couldn't always set aside a day or a whole, however much time I needed. I found that it was better for me to just keep doing it consistently and be a little more fluid. Maybe that's just because I had to be as a team of one.
Sure.
I couldn't afford the time. However, like I said, sometimes they just want me to figure it out for them. And so it's just a process of getting to know each other and also seeing what is resonating with their audience.
Yeah. I find that for me, I like to have things scheduled because you never know the what if. And I didn't like the stress of, oh my gosh, I only posted one this week. Like I needed to know that there was like 2 things that just auto posted. So in case I didn't get to it, it wasn't stressful, but it gave me a little bit more freedom to say, oh, okay, well, these 2 are this, but yet I did this and I didn't talk about it. So let me just make that a story or make the reel of like my day today. And that way I have a little bit more creative freedom, I feel, when I can be spontaneous, but then I have the confidence of knowing something's there just in case I don't want to, or if I don't feel spontaneous.
Yeah. And that's something that, everyone has to do what works for them, right? So that worked for me. And this isn't really even the process that I teach. I teach doing it the way that you do it. Scheduling things and keeping it flexible because I recognize that's what's going to work for most people. I think the outlier. So it's funny that I'm like, oh, I found success doing it this way, but I also recognize that may not be best.
But that's great from an education standpoint because you have to, everybody's different. They have their own cadence. They have their own comfort level. And so, just what works for you might not work for the next person. So being open to kind of hearing all the options is good.
Yeah. And I like to kind of infuse little bits of self-love into marketing because one, as a marketer or social media or honestly anybody, but we always feel pressure to do more, or we know this could be better if we just had more time. And I had this whiteboard that we referred to as the board of disappointments, which was an affectionate term. I know it sounds really negative, but to me it was funny. But it was all the pipe dreams of the things I wanted to do and revamp because I take personal pride in what I do. Whether people know that I'm responsible for this marketing or not, I want it to be good. And I don't aim for perfection. I aim for, as long as it's intentional and well thought out, I'm okay with that. But I just really like to tell people, do what works for you. Don't stress about it. And, to that end, I had a mentor once who, well, still do, but one of his current common themes was, it's just real estate. It's important. It's great. I love it. I have thought about leaving the industry many times and just always drawn back. I really, really love being involved in commercial real estate, and development and construction was really fun too. But it's just real estate. This isn't surgery. We aren't saving lives. It can wait.
Yes. I tell my team the exact same thing, because I say, yes, it's exciting that you get a deal across the finish line and the client's happy and the property owner's happy. But again, like, if you're getting a call at 8:00 at night to address maybe a negotiation in the deal, that can wait till the next morning. No one's going to die. Not doing surgery. It's all good. Yes. And for the most part, again, we're dealing with people. The only things that might be out of our hands sometimes is that permit timeline and inspections and things like that we all get a little frustrated about. But at the end of the day, if you can go and be kind to someone, it's magical what can happen in return.
Yeah, I agree. I'm so thankful I'm not in project management.
Yes, deadlines and spreadsheets and all of that.
I love spreadsheets.
Oh, here, as we're talking about kind of content, calendar, and all of that, that makes sense. Yes, good flow and processes in place. So if there was one marketing task that you could do forever, what part of the marketing world do you love the most?
I'd say that it's what I love the most. It's just something I can't seem to let go of, and that's doing proposals, like designing proposals or long pitches, long proposals, OMs. I think it's because it blends two of my favorite things. It's strategy and it's design. And no matter what, even though I'm more in consulting and education at this point, I still really want to design stuff. I have a lot of fun with it. I think it's just another place to be creative.
100%. And for those who are listening that don't know what an OM, it's an offering memorandum. In the event that a property goes on the market for sale, we, of course, love our acronyms. So we pull that offering memorandum down to an OM. And basically, how would you describe it, Katie? What kind of information is in an OM that, folks are looking for if they're looking to buy a property?
How much money you're going to make, how many tenants you have, how long they're going to be there, and what they pay per month. Also your expenses and why this property is positioned well for whatever purpose. So if it's multifamily, we're going to focus on lifestyle amenities nearby and demographics. And I don't have to go into all the details, but yeah, basically how much money you're going to make.
Yeah.
Condition of the property and what you're going to make on it.
Yeah, and I love reviewing them, even though I'm not in investment sales, because it gives me a kind of a pulse and a temperature on the market. I like looking at ones that are maybe in like Denver, Colorado, or, Austin, Texas, because then you kind of understand what's happening in the market and how you might be able to relate that back to the market that you're focused on.
Mm-hmm.
So the storytelling part is really fun.
It really is. That's why I love it, I think. And I also I get to play my part in shaping my community. Even if it's, for an OM that the team is working on that's many states away, it's still just, like you said, it's really cool to see who's doing what and in what markets.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like private detective work, right? To see what companies are growing and who's adding more jobs and what municipality is supportive of growth versus others. It is a little bit of sleuthing, I think, and you get a deep dive into that corridor, even if it's just not home base for you.
Yeah. It's funny you said sleuthing. I was thinking that in my head. I'm like, I've been commended on my internet sleuthing skills. Verbatim.
I love it. So I know that you believe marketing is essential for companies to make a big impact. What's an inspiring project that you've worked on that, sometimes you got an assignment and you're like, yep, I got this, no problem. But then there's others that you're like, I'm so excited. Are there some recently that have just got you fired up? And can you share a little bit more about why?
I can't really share details on it, but there was one that was a multifamily project. Actually, two. I'm going to say two. They were both multifamily projects. And at the time, I was working for a general contractor, one of which we received a lot of renderings and, what's the word I'm looking for? You know what? Forget it. It's not really a common term. Most people are going to know. renderings for a multifamily property. There were a lot and they were beautiful. So I was able to pull together not only the story, but also understood more of what they were looking for. This developer had a lot of press about them, so I was able to research them and understand their goals and their values. That was really, really helpful because I'm sure everyone knows the technical team writes technical stuff, but it's typically the marketing person who's writing the executive summary, which if you can't hook them, they're not looking at the rest of your proposal unless they scroll straight to the budget page. But
which a lot of them do.
Yeah, and they do. And that's what makes sense. You're not making your decision based on how the proposal looks. The way the proposal looks is of how seriously you take your company is what I think, and how seriously you would treat this project. But it was just super fun. I had great visuals to start with. I could build a color scheme. It was for a development that was in an area that I personally visited often and was like, I am truly honored. I know this sounds really cheesy, but I am actually honored to make what little impact I can in shaping this area. I would love to see this project here. So I was able to put my personal values into the writing. Ultimately, we didn't end up landing that one. I'm sure it was probably about budget, but it just was fun to lay that all out. I was proud of the design that I made. Another multifamily one. This one was actually not a proposal coming from our company, but more or less the investment deck coming on behalf of the developer. The developer didn't have a designer or a marketing person to go to, and so we sort of volunteered my time through the contractor. And there was just a lot that I was like, maybe you should phrase it like this. And although I'm not a developer, I really do think you should include these pieces of data, and here's how I would position it. So it just felt very good and very validating that they were not only receptive of that, but they were very grateful. And I was like, oh, yay.
Yes.
It's like we're in marketing, but we know a lot about the business. And so when we can kind of prove that to ourselves and prove that to other people, it just feels a little more solidifying that what we're doing is actually meaningful. Not that I didn't think it was, it's just nice to hear out loud.
For sure. What is the 5 love languages? And so certainly words of affirmation are good. So to get that feedback, I think is critical. I've got a wall of all my thank you notes. And if I'm having a down day, I look over there and I'm like, I made an impact in that person's life. They were kind enough to write me a letter, and I've got it on my wall so that anytime I need to look at it, I can fill my bucket back up.
That's so sweet. That's a great idea too.
Thank you. So what changes have taken place in the world of marketing, obviously beyond getting on digital platform and social media? Do you see that there are more to come? Do you see that video is necessary, or are folks, happy with kind of a D version? What does your crystal ball say about the future of marketing for real estate?
Video needs to stick around. It is more visually hooking. So if you're just playing into basic psychology, video helps and faces help. So those are just 2 things that human beings naturally like to see. So even if you haven't written a great caption or you don't have a great story to tell and you're just trying, you can try some of those visual cues to try to stop the scroll. So video is going to be here to stay, but I don't think it's going to be as important as it has seemed in the last 2 years or so. Even Instagram admitted that they over prioritized it and are kind of walking that back a little bit. So carousels have been really huge, and I think that one thing that's going to continue to be around, as it really never left, but it's just authenticity and transparency. And I'll define that by saying that just, get on there and say what you have to say. It doesn't have to be this perfectly crafted long caption. I mean, if it's taking you longer than, if you've done the research already, if it's taking you longer than maybe 10, 20 minutes to write your caption, you're overthinking it. Go back to the drawing board. Spit out something, just brain dump onto a paper and ask ChatGPT to, format it for you, if you will. Yeah, those are the main 2 that are sticking around. I mean, that's specifically with social media, but I don't really see a whole heck of a lot of change with email marketing and websites. I would say that social media is one of those areas that has really been around. As you know, when a person first hears your name or your company name, they're going to Google you. First thing that pops up is your website, and the second thing that pops up is your social media. Just because of the SEO control that they have. Your website is your brochure, and it's important, and you do need to keep it updated, but it isn't so critical to get what analysis paralysis and not get one out. You need to get it out and update it regularly. And then the second thing is social media is more of the behind the scenes, who you are day to day, as though they were actually interacting with you.
Like to liken it to food, right? So the website is the dish, and then the social media shows you kind of the ingredients on how it got there. I have to admit that, my team tells me that part of the reason why they opted to come work with me is that I was myself, and I'm like, hey, this is my day. This is what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, that looks awesome. I want to go do that. And so it was that kind of reined them in. And then when they met me in person, it was a little bit of, is she really that person that I saw on social media? And then they go, oh yeah, like she's totally the same person. So I think that's important to carry that, that truth through.
And that's a perfect example of, what I meant when I said authenticity and transparency is, if you're going to get on camera and you're going to talk, you should be talking the same way as you do in person. To some degree. Now, obviously, there are times when we get a little comfortable with someone and it can be a little less than what others might consider professional. That's fine. Keep that. But at the same time, if you swear a lot and you consistently do and you're about this thing and everyone knows it, then I don't think there's any reason to really hide it. That's my opinion.
Appreciate that. I like encouraging people to be themselves, whether they curse or not. Like, it's them. Like, don't try to be anybody else. So for those that are listening and they want to get in touch with you, share with us, the best platforms to do that.
I am most active on Instagram, and my name was taken, so I had to put the Katie Meehan. So that's my handle, is the Katie, Katie. Meehan is M as in Michael, Eehan as in Nancy. And on there, I have all my links and everything. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and pretty much the same. It's, the LinkedIn link / the Katie Meehan.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today, Katie. Your passion for connecting businesses with spaces and properties and construction and really making it human is very important. Can't wait to see the impact that you'll make, and appreciate you sharing a little bit of knowledge with us, but know that she has so much more. If you've loved this conversation and want to hear more stories like this, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Your support helps us reach more people and share the amazing work that folks like Katie and others are doing in this space. Together, we like to spotlight the hustle and the heart behind creating spaces that truly connect us. Hit that subscribe button and share with your friends, and let's grow this community.
I'm Katie Meehan, and you're listening to Hustle and Heart.